Hello there everyone, I am Sabanai2aka Nightmare, and welcome back to Chaos Head. Well, last time, Rimi's back. We learned a little bit more about Yua's backstory too, which, yeah. I've already made my feelings quite clear about Yua's parents. Either their minds broke because of whatever the bad guys are doing, or the other idea is that it was their way of coping / grieving, where they couldn't comprehend the idea that one of their daughters just died. So in a sort of traumatic response, they decided, we only have one daughter, we didn't have twins. Because the third idea is that, oh, thank God the kid's gone. Now we don't have to, oh, thank God. What do you mean you had a sister? What are you talking about? No, it was only been you this whole time. Meanwhile, they're just being the shittiest parents in the fucking world. I don't know. I don't know the real thing here. I do not know what to believe. But I want to hope that it's something that's out of their control, like the bad guys fucked with their minds a little bit. But at the same time, I can't keep using the bad guys as like, this is a perfect excuse to explain shitty character behavior. I don't know. So, let's go. I stared in a daze at Seirutan as she moved around the monitor. The final episode of Blood Tune had aired deep into last night. The story was gradually getting more and more intense, and the episode had received particularly high praise on @channel. This was the third time I'd seen it, but none of it was really sticking with me. I checked the time and saw that it was past 10 p.m. Rimi had left at around 8. While she'd been here, she'd encouraged my depressed self in many ways, and she'd said so many nice things to me. Thanks to her being by my side, I'd felt less lonely today than the entire week prior. That being said, Rimi still wasn't taking the situation all that seriously. It felt like she was avoiding talking about New Gen entirely, which also potentially goes into my theory that, I don't know, maybe it's that first scene that we saw of Rimi talking to Shogun and talking about killing Takumi. There's like some part of me that's thinking like, she doesn't want Takumi to break and awaken his D-sword. So she's like, I bet you him awakening a D-sword could potentially be the worst possible outcome. Potentially. Because I don't want to see Rimi in a bad light. I really don't. It's my same thing with Yua. I don't want to see them in a bad light. I don't know. Maybe she was just done with it. With me. Her friend had been hurt in the earthquake, and it sounded like she already had a lot on her plate with just that. She probably didn't have any room left to bother with me and my problems. But the issue with that was, while yes, I was probably way too paranoid, there was no doubt that this was a genuinely dangerous situation. I could be killed today, even. Shogun had been coming after me all this time. Persistent didn't even begin to cover it. If I could just understand what he was doing or why he was doing it, then I could work out some countermeasures.
そういえば、あのおじさん、別れ際にこんなこと言ってたのら。中でも一番特別なのは、その目、誰の目を産み落とした少年。
You are a protagonist. Whose eyes are those eyes? You could hear those words all over Shibuya by now. On the net, it had become synonymous with the culprit. It was a phrase I'd used pretty often for a really long time. It was without a doubt a message from Shogun, who knew that. Either that or an intentional way of provoking me. When had I first started using that phrase? It felt like someone had taught it to me. Thankfully, I read that before I clicked away. I vaguely remembered the first time I'd used it. It was an essay I'd written back in elementary school. The title was that very same phrase. Whose eyes are those eyes? I'd almost completely forgotten what I'd actually written in it. I wanted to check now. What had I written in that essay? It was probably stored at my parents' place, though I had a feeling they might have thrown the old thing away by now. Then again, when it came to things that were pretty important to me as a kid, I did have a habit of storing them in a big empty candy tin I'd used to call my treasure box. Oh god, I used to do that too. Like, okay, you're gonna get a kick. You guys are probably gonna laugh at this. Years ago, back whenever I was still in high school, they used to sell, there's this candy called Red Hots. They used to sell them in heart-shaped tins around Valentine's Day, and I got myself one of those for Valentine's Day, and obviously I kind of ate all the Red Hots in a single sitting, which, you know, that's not healthy, but hey, I was stupid. So I did that, and I always had that heart-shaped tin, and sometimes I would put just a bunch of miscellaneous things in there, like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, because I didn't have a deck box at the time, and that kept going until I got one of those metal tins for cards, but anyway. I used to store cards in there. If I found a particularly weird-looking rock in the gravel, I would always like, oh, this is a fancy-looking rock. I'm going to keep that. And then I'd put that inside the tin as well. I don't know. I don't know whatever happened to it. It's probably trashed or recycled into something else. Who knows? But I don't know. That just kind of reminds me of something that I used to do. The essay could potentially have been in there. What to do? Should I go to my parents? But... Your sister? Yeah. You're too scared? Ashamed? I didn't want to show my face to Nanami. I wouldn't know what to say.
僕はどうしようもなくヘタレだ。
I sluggishly rose from my seat, then collapsed onto the sofa.
あなた、なんでここにいんの？え？これは違うんだからね。私は別にさ、立ち食いそばが好物なわけじゃないさ。
You leave me out of this.
何ニヤニヤしてんの？このボケナス。もう怒った。うなれ！侍コンデンサー！
Lying face up, I gazed at the ceiling while ignoring Seida's protesting. That dreary, bare steel ceiling. Unlike my room at my parents' house, there wasn't a single groove in the ceiling that looked like a person's face. Suddenly in the corner of my vision, I noticed a familiar tin sitting on the erogi packages piled up on my loft bed. Oh wait, did you actually have it here?
あれって。
I hurriedly stood up and climbed the ladder to get a closer look. It was a reddish-brown, rectangular tin, about the size of a B5 piece of paper. The word shortbread was written on the lid in white letters. There was no mistaking it. It was my treasure box. I must have brought it from my parents' place. Though I definitely didn't remember doing so. Good job me. Always thinking ahead. I quickly grabbed the tin and opened the lid. Inside were a few test answer sheets, essays, scraps of paper torn out from sketchbooks, and so on. It was mostly all paper, but there were still a couple of small objects in there. I took all the pages from the tin at once, then began flipping through them for my target. It didn't take long to find. After all, it was at the very top. How convenient. Whose Eyes Are Those Eyes by Nishijo Takumi, Class 4-3. Or 9-3. I think it's in the shape of a 4, but it's also a 9. I don't know. The essay paper had faded in color. The handwriting, not even a mother could call it good. I don't know, that looks okay. Could this essay be hiding some kind of important secret? Something Shogun was particularly exploiting? Something that had to do with why the homeless man had referred to me as the most special? With a gulp, I began to read it one word at a time, being careful not to overlook anything. Whose eyes are those eyes? Nishijo Takumi, class 4-3. Okay, so it is 4. I dream a lot. Okay, this is younger Takumi. Hold on. I dream a lot. In my dreams, older me visits me in a time machine. He doesn't look like me at all. His time machine has a lot of buttons. I think if you push one, a shower or some shampoo or something comes out. I asked older me how it works, and he said you could go see dinosaurs or even go back to when cavemen were around. He asked me what I'm bad at in school, and I said I'm bad at math. He told me there was a switch that would make me really good at math. I tried to push it once, but he got mad. He said I had to work hard and get better by myself. That was the only time he got mad at me. After he stopped being mad, he was super nice, so I was happy. He told me about the girl I was gonna marry. That's a secret. I asked him about God. He told me God is real. I think he's real too. My mom said God is always watching, and he'll make you go to hell if you do bad things. I'm just not trying to imagine a kid writing this. So I can absolutely never do bad things. I have to be nice to my little sister too. Mom told me God doesn't watch you do bad things, but that it's a scary man instead. What? Oh. The scary man is the whose eyes are those eyes monster. He makes you go to hell if he sees you. What? God's eyes and whose eyes are those eyes are in the sky, the ceiling, the walls. There's a lot of them in my school, and they're watching me no matter what. So I think I have to do a lot of good things like studying and other stuff because of that. It's embarrassing though because they watch me even when I do things like go to the toilet or take a bath. Wait a minute, his mother suggested the name? His mother came up with whose eyes are those eyes? Also, ever since I was little, I could close my eyes and dream sometimes, even though I wasn't sleeping. It was like the inside of my head was like a video game or a manga. But when I do that, the whose eyes are those eyes monster comes out, so I don't want to do that. I asked my mom and she told me not to do it. But while I'm writing this essay, I asked older me in my dreams to tell me more about this time machine, but he said I knew everything. He wouldn't tell me more stuff because I'm just a kid. So from now on, I want to do lots of good things so I can beat whose eyes are those eyes. The end. What the fuck?
なんだかよくわからないな。
This would have been around the time when I first started feeling God's gaze. Maybe I was going through some sort of phase back then. Either way, trying to understand anything from this extremely cryptic essay was beyond impossible. I don't know, I think I gleaned something. It felt like it'd be easier to decipher a bunch of hieroglyphs than it would be trying to figure out what the hell I'd been talking about. As I thought that, I noticed that something was scribbled on the back of the page. Come to think of it, hadn't I loved doodling back then? Yeah, like in my social studies textbooks, the pictures of historic figures would always have mustaches or sunglasses drawn on them. And my notebooks would always have flip book-esque animations drawn in the corners. Back then, I'd started enjoying drawing more and more, to the point where I'd even gotten my parents to buy me a sketchbook. Although to clarify, it wasn't like my drawings were anything to write home about. Yeah, I look back at my old drawings and I just cringe at them too. But I still own them. I'm actually looking at the binder that I've got most of my very first drawings still in. Back on the old line paper that you'd write on. Yeah, I still got those. Even got some weird age on them. I'm surprised some of them survived as long as they have. Immersing myself in nostalgia, I turned the essay over to check what I'd scribbled on it. What the? It was an incomprehensible drawing. But while it was definitely incomprehensible, there was still something familiar about it. Something I'd seen recently.
IR2.
IR2. Whether it was a mathematical formula, had some other kind of meaning, or just a meaningless string of numbers and letters. I had no idea. But... oh... Shogun wrote that. This formula. It was the exact same one Shogun had posted out of nowhere. Back when he'd first come in contact with me in the chat room. Whose eyes are those eyes? And I are too. Two key things that had come from the essay I had written many years ago. Things that even I myself had forgotten. And if Shogun knew them, that would mean that he'd been reading my mind after all. What the hell? Hey, Bon. Within the Frisia reception room, or rather the narrow space partitioned off by a few shelves being used as one, Bon sat deep in concentration, scanning through a number of files. Hi, Yua. Opposite to him sat Yua, huddled up and making herself small. She had been taking frequent glances at Bon in an attempt to read his expression. From an outsider's perspective, it appeared almost like a child showing their parent the report card. Bon was currently reading the report of everything Yua had investigated concerning the new-gen cases and Nishijo Takumi. It also included the chat log between Takumi and Shogun from the day prior to the crucifixion case. As a result of her findings, Yua had concluded that Takumi was undoubtedly the true culprit behind the new-gen cases.
すごいわね。これ全部一人で調べたの？
はい、一応。
Yua hung her head apologetically in response to Momose's praise. She stared at the girofragi straps hanging from the bag below her feet. She was speaking with the detective and the boss of an investigation firm. In terms of investigating, they were as professional as one could get. Compared to their prowess, information gathered by the investigation of an ordinary high school girl would be akin to childish scribblings. And yet, despite the supposed gap, Bon and Momose found themselves both impressed by the quality of the report.
なかなかいい着眼点だ。よく調べたな。とりわけこの西条匠の多重性ってのが興味深い。西条匠は多重人格であり、オリジナルとなった西条匠の人格が眠っている時、つまり他の人格が活動中に事件を起こしている。
I mean, from their perspective, and from Yua's own investigation, this does make sense. But the difficulty is that we are constantly through Nishijo Takumi's perspective for a majority of this. And you don't want to believe your main character has this sort of disability, or they have this evil persona.
本当に面白いわ。まあでも、ちょっとばかり現実離れしすぎてるかな。
A skosh too unrealistic? You don't see that word very often every now and then.
刑事さんはその西条くんのこと犯人だって考えてないんですか？
はっきり言っていいかい？
Please do. His face stiffened. Oh, her face stiffened, sorry. But after a moment, Yua nodded.
警察じゃ西条匠は容疑者として見ていない。
Really?
へえ、そうなの。
Oh, I think it's because Bon thinks there's something more to this. Not just Yua, but Momose gaped in amazement as well. A wry smile formed on Bon's lips. He leaned back in his seat and rested the back of his head in his hands.
少なくとも貼り付け事件じゃ西条は白だ。遺体を貼り付けていた杭には指紋がべったり付着しててな。
Oh.
西条の指紋を手に入れて照合してみたんだが、全く合致しなかった。
Okay, so they kind of cleared, they sort of cleared Takumi in that perspective.
そん
Yua was turning paler by the second. Her lips trembled. Now that everything she had believed in had collapsed beneath her feet, feelings of guilt at the awful things she had said to Takumi encroached upon her heart. I don't blame her, though. It's... I don't know. It's kind of one. It's definitely. Well, this is a situation where there were like no superpowers or some shit like that was going on. She would have every reason to potentially believe that Takumi was involved in the crucifixion cases. The evidence that she had gathered would be enough to kind of potentially affect her thinking that way. So I can't really be mad at her. It wasn't out of pure maliciousness. Like, she's not going to be like some people who take the slimmest piece of what they consider to be evidence and run with it to the grave until, like, it's all laid out. And by then, they've already dug themselves so far of a hole in believing a false truth that at this point, they're just like, fuck.
杭にあった指紋から容疑者についてはほぼ固まってんだ。
Oh, yeah?
まだマスコミにも公表してねえけどな。ちなみにそれ、諏訪のお手柄だったりする。
All thanks to Sua.
スワちゃんは頑張ってるっていうのに、バンちゃんはよくここでのんびりしていられるわね。
実はあれ、捜査本部から外されたんだわ。
Wait, they gave you the boot? What?
はあ
You actually got fired?
本来の捜査サボって G レートのこととか調べてんの上司にバレちゃってな。
Ah. This was the reason why his subordinate Sua had been the one to inform him of the 7th incident. There'd been no reason for anyone else to call an investigator that was no longer working the case.
あんたね、もっとうまく立ち回りなさいよ。まあバンちゃんに G レートのことを教えた私にも責任はあるけど。
気にすんなって。
That was the sound of my water bottle hitting my foot. Ow! I'm okay. I'm okay.
それに G レートの件は個人的にも気になってたんだ。
Oh no.
まあ、西条にしても貼り付け以外の事件じゃまだ捜査線上にいる。もしかするとユアちゃんの推理が正しいかもしれん。
ニュージェネは同一犯による連続殺人事件じゃないって警察は考えてるの？
Potentially multiple people.
まだなんとも。ただ、ついさっき第7の事件が起きたようだしな。個人的には犯人は複数いると思ってる。
Fair assumption.
いろいろ喋っちまった。口外したって知られたらクビになっちまう。今のはオフレコな。
I like Bon. Bon playfully placed his forefinger on his lip.
で、本題なんだが。
Oh boy, here we go. Having thought that her report had been the reason she'd been summoned, Yua tilted her head in puzzlement.
聞きたいことってのは学校のことなんだよ。
The school?
ユアちゃんは青井瀬名って子知ってるかい？
Oh, because of the footage that he saw.
君の同級生のはずなんだが。
After pondering for a moment, Yua shook her head apologetically.
名前は聞いたことがあるような気がしますけど、話したことはありません。
ああ、そうか。
その人が犯人なんですか？
Immediately she jumps to the culprit.
ああ、全くの別件だ。昨 昨日徹夜したのもその子のこと調べてたからでな。
Oh.
あんたさっき女子高生の生態がどうとかって。
Momose, ever perplexed, received a wink and a grin from Bon before he turned back toward Yua.
例えば学校でものすごい手品を使う女生徒がいるって噂を聞いたことは？
I'm sorry, what the hell are you talking about?
いえ、ありませんけど。
さっぱり話が見えないわね。何のこと？
Show them the footage. If you were able to get a copy of it.
例えば何もない空間から剣を取り出すような手品とか。
Yua's head snapped upward. Her expression was one of blatant astonishment.
どうしてそれ。
Wait, what? Despite being the one that asked the question, Bon also had a look of surprise on his face. Excuse me?
心当たりがあるのかい？
Yua hesitated, then after a moment nodded resolutely.
どこで見た？
駅の近くの地下道です。
Underpass by the station. What?
西条くんと岸本さんが。
She witnessed her summoning a sword.
フェスだな。それで
Yua briefly recounted her dramatic pursuit from around 2 weeks prior. How she had gone to a manga cafe to meet Nishijo Takumi. How she had been a little forceful when talking to him, causing him to flee. A little! How she had frantically chased him around Shibuya. How he had then managed to evade her. And how right when she was about to give up, she had stumbled upon Takumi and Ayase entering the underpass.
だから私、その階段の上から二人の様子をこっそり伺っていたんです。二人は階段の一番下で何か話していて。あ、どんなことを話していたかは聞き取れなかったんですけど。
You saw Ayase summoning her blade.
そしたら突然岸本さんが剣を何もないところから取り出したんです。すごく大きな剣でバッグにも入らないような。
まさか。
This is crazy how they're just starting to like, what the fuck's going on? Like they're cluing in on this.
俺が見たのと同じだな。
え？
俺が見たのは岸本じゃなかったかな。
It was done by Senna.
さっき名前を出した青井瀬名っていう少女だ。
We now have 2 accounts here of what appear to be normal people witnessing something vastly incredible and also impossible.
実は葵が剣を振り回してたっていう目撃証言が渋谷のあちこちから出てる。
その手品、渋谷の若い子たちの間で流行ってるのかしら。
And here's a normal person who didn't witness it trying to rationalize it as well as they can. Because she didn't see something so crazily impossible.
でも私が見たあれは手品にはとても見えませんでした。それに
他にも何か見たの？
信じてもらえるかどうかわからなくて、誰にも話したことはないんですけど。
You saw the moment that Senna created a second copy of herself.
あの時岸本
Or
さん
Kishimoto, sorry.
剣を出しただけじゃなくて。
Yua's words faltered, and she slowly licked her lips. She looked lost on whether or not she should continue. Her eyes darted around the room. You've already got Bon on your side right now because he witnessed the same thing that you witnessed, in a way. But eventually, she steeled her resolve and fixed her gaze upon Bon.
二人に分身したんです。
Yep, she saw that.
まるで本当にその場に二人いるみたいでした。私、わけがわからなくて。
Even he's just like, oh. Oh shit. A heavy silence covered the reception room. All three within it were at a complete loss for words.
とにかく一体どんな種があるのかわかんねえが、そんな手品みてえな真似ができる連中がこの渋谷には何人かいるらしい。まあそれと岸本綾瀬も青井瀬名も西条匠と接触したことは確認済みだ。
Right.
これが偶然とは思えねえわけよ。
西条くん。
あの少年の周囲ではどうも現実離れしたことばかりが起きてるような気がする。
No shit! As Bond said that, his words from the call before reappeared in his mind.
怪獣か魔法使いで済ませられるならよっぽどいいけどな。
But it's being the work of normal people. Not so normal people. Bond's murmur did not reach the other two. Averse to the gloomy atmosphere, Momose took a breath and sipped on the tea her subordinate had brought over to her. Then as she brought the cup back down, she put on a smile and unceremoniously made to change the topic.
ところで岩ちゃん、そのカバンにぶら下がってるカエル、最近流行ってるんでしょ？
The Giru Froggies!
あ、はい。
Yua gave a sigh of relief, having been saved by the kind company president.
なんて言うんだっけ？
ゲロカエルンです。
It doesn't help that every time I say Giru, my brain defaults to Giro, like Dr. Giro from Dragon Ball Z. So it's kind of weird. I see the word with the exact same spelling, so I constantly have to remind myself, wait, that's not DBZ. This is not DBZ. This is Giru. Giru, not Giro. Giru.
いろいろ種類が出てるんじゃなかった？ 10 種類ぐらい。
はい。私は友達からもらっただけなので詳しくは知らないんですけど。
なんだってこんな手抜き商品が流行るんだろうな。見た目だって俺の方がずっと可愛いぞ。
Yeah, but nobody wants to get a bunch of collectibles of you, Bon. Because you can't really have multiple of you. There can only be one of you.
バンちゃん、寝言は寝てから言いなさい。
冗談だって。
私も実はどうして流行っているのかよくわからないんです。
あら、結構可愛いと思うけどね。
I mean, they are kind of cute.
ももちゃんの見る目も衰えたな。
世論は私の方が正しいって証明してるじゃない。
I mean, yeah, I guess it kind of does.
バンちゃんも買いに行った方がいいわよ。
Oh my god, could you imagine him just kind of carrying on a little Giro Froggy? Put it like in that little spot inside his little his tie. Just kind of have it like poking its head out there because he never tightens up his freaking tie.
一体どこへ行けば買えるものなんだ？
Probably the same place you get Oompas or little Oopas. You know, if you might get lucky, you might get the metal Oopa.
ゲロカエルの専門ショップがあちこちにあって。
Oh, okay.
専門ショップだ？
Exclusive shops.
そこで金曜日に行列に並べば買えると思います。
Hmm.
金曜日。
Wait, are you... Wait. What is it, Bon? You smell something? Is something afoot? You think there might be some in there?
毎週金曜日に新しいデザインのものが発売になるんです。好きな子はコンプリートとか言って全部集めてるみたいで。 あの
While Yua was in the midst of speaking, Bon had turned to Momose while scratching the stubble on his chin.
金曜か。
What is it?
流行るとは思えないものが流行ってて、 GE レートは毎週末に上昇する。
Oh! Do you think the Gyro Froggies are connected to the GE rate? He said they increase on the weekends. These things are released on Fridays, and yet for some reason the GE rate increases around that same time period. Is it because of the multitude of people? Or there might be something to do with the Gyro Froggy company. Which actually, now that I think about it, that there is substantial... There's one scene that played that kind of confirms to me that maybe these Gyro Froggy things are part of, like, the big bad company in the Committee of 300. And it was that one scene where that white-haired bastard casually tossed a Gyro Froggy in his trash bin.
まさかバンちゃん。
当たってみる価値はあるかもな。
They might be connected. Hospital. The second I'd poked my head into school on Thursday, Misumi-kun immediately invited me to go see Ayase in the hospital with him. Given that the idea hadn't even crossed my mind, it had caught me off guard. But before I'd even been able to respond, Rimi said she wanted to come too for whatever reason. And I ended up being swept along with her as a result. Now, let me be clear, I had a heart and all. But considering the menace known as Shogun was drawing closer and closer to me, I didn't think this was exactly the time to show it. I didn't want to die. Coming in through the front entrance, Misumi-kun looked around the lobby in confusion.
どうしたの？
いや、岸本の病室ってどこなんだろうなって思ってよ。
Had he seriously come this far without knowing that? This guy was beyond belief sometimes.
ここは外来棟だよ。病棟は隣。
そうなのか。
You goofed.
大臣、しっかりしてよ。
Ah. Sorry, I see that like, Tokyo General Hospital. Not AH Tokyo General Hospital. It was the hospital I'd gone to ever since I was a kid. I'd even come here just the other day, so I was pretty knowledgeable on where everything was. Dr. Takashina's face flashed across my mind, and I involuntarily groaned to myself. As we walked to the hospital ward, Misumi-kun turned to me.
で、病棟の何号室だと思う？
そんなのわかんないよ。
Didn't you guys go to the front desk and ask? This was a general hospital, so there were obviously a ton of different wards and departments. If I had to guess...
多分外科じゃないかな。でももしかすると精神科かも。
There hadn't been any visible injuries on Ayase after she'd fallen, and considering she'd attempted suicide, her mind had likely been brought to the brink, so her being in the psychiatric ward seemed very possible. Even I'd been taken to the psych ward after the uproar at O-Front.
タクって物知りだな。
常識でしょ、常識。ね、タク。
Thank you for calling him a dork. I don't think it's necessarily common sense. I might have not known if I hadn't come here so many times in the past. Right as we were entering the hospital ward, Rimi ground to a halt.
私、お手洗い行ってくる。先に行ってて。
You don't want to see Ayase? I figured. With a wave of her hand, Rimi quickly headed back toward the outpatient ward. Thinking that wandering around the ward would cause problems for the patients, we decided to ask for help at the nurse's station. And just like I'd predicted, they told us that she was on the floor for psychiatric patients. How much you want to bet Shogun's here? I see the sword. The hospital room had an area of around 10 square meters. There was a toilet to the right of the entrance. There was a bed near the back. The setting sun shone through the window on the other side of the room. Ayase wasn't in the bed. Based on how the sheets were a little messed up, it looked like she had been there until very recently. Oh, that's fucking fast. Oh no.
どこ行ったんだ？
さあ。
ま、戻ってくるまで待つか。
The moment he said that, Misumi-kun started rummaging around the room for some reason. He didn't even have a shred of decency. Right now, it wouldn't be wrong to refer to this as Ayase's room. A number of her things were lying around mixed with the smell of antiseptic was that nice scent you could only find in a girl's room. What? Just kind of bursting into it while she wasn't there felt like we were peeping right into her private life, and I didn't feel very comfortable with that.
そういうの良くないよ。外で、待ってた方が。
I swear to God, Misumi, you better not be doing what I think you're doing.
ちょっと見るだけだって。お前も知りたいと思わねえのか？フェスの私生活ってやつをよ。
Oh boy, alright. Well, that's an entire section that's going to be deleted, because we are not going to go through that. So, none of that. Anyway.
どこ行ったんだ？
さあ。
The window was open. Wind blew against the white curtains, sending them fluttering in the breeze. For some odd reason, it had caught my eye ever since I'd come in the room. It felt like a negative delusion could start any second. One where Ayase jumped from the rooftop and fell past that window. One where if I looked down, I'd find her sprawled on the ground, covered in blood, and with gray matter scattered everywhere. Well, I had to check. I couldn't bear the burning curiosity. As if possessed, my shaky legs moved step by step toward the window. I stood right by it. The sky was dyed in evening glow. It was a crisp fall evening. What might have been below? The very picture of hell itself? With a gulp, I ever so slowly peeked about the window and down toward the ground. There was nothing out of the ordinary. I couldn't see Ayase's corpse anywhere. Guess I'd just been paranoid. But when I went to retract my head in relief, I noticed it. The sword. On the window 1 story below, a single towel was waving in the wind. Is that writing? Oh, fucking, I just noticed it. Whose eyes are those eyes? I assumed it was just a normal white towel, but words of some kind were scrawled on it in a dark blue lettering. Due to it flapping in the wind, I couldn't quite figure out what it said. Not that I really cared, the words scribbled on some towel shouldn't have bothered me at all. But a part of me still tried desperately to read it. And when I looked closer, I saw... Whose eyes are those eyes? I was speechless. I couldn't look away. And right after... the towel was suddenly pulled back through the window. Almost as if they had known I'd been looking at the towel at that very moment. No. That couldn't be possible. Nobody I knew could have been in the room below me. Nobody I knew had been hospitalized. Even if someone other than a patient were stalking me from the room below, it would have been impossible for them to predict that I would peer down from here, right? There were no surveillance cameras in the room. It was all just a coincidence. It had to be. But what if... maybe... just maybe it wasn't. Terror creeping up my back, I turned back toward the entrance. There was nobody there. The door was shut. I immediately pulled myself away from the window, feeling incredibly uneasy. Don't think about it. Try as hard as you can not to. This is a coincidence. A simple coincidence. That was what I told myself.
見ろよタク、変な本があるぞ。
I suddenly realized Misumi-kun was calling me. He had taken a magazine from high up on the shelf and was staring at it fixedly.
ヌーだぜ、ヌー。
New?
この雑誌、まだ続いてたんだな。
New? New is a magazine that focused on all facets of the occult. UFOs, aliens, ESP, religion, urban legends, mysterious phenomena, super ancient civilizations, ooh parts, etc. It wasn't difficult at all to believe that our very own schizo shit-loving Ayase would be reading it.
こっちの文庫本は、何々グラジオール記黙示録詩編ファンタジー小説っぽいな。
Don't say that in front of her. I wasn't familiar with that specific book, but the term gladiole did ring a bell. Where'd I heard it again? I was pretty sure it had been pretty recent.
岸本と付き合うとなると、この趣味に合わせないといけねえのか。大変そうだぜ、これは。
I've already said everything I want to say about Misumi. Had he still not given up on dating Ayase, even after being turned down in an instant last time? His ego can't handle it. Suddenly, Ayase's D-sword came into view in the corner of my eye. It was leaning against the window. It looked like a space battleship ripped right out of a sci-fi movie. My opinion on it hadn't really changed either. It was an awesome-looking sword, possessing equal parts beauty and cruelty. Even though it wasn't glowing and even though it was just leaning against a window, it still had the typical impressive feeling of presence to it. Misumi-kun showed no sign of noticing the sword. Huh. So the eyes of normal people couldn't see them after all. I wonder, if I were to take it without Ayase knowing, would the sword become mine? If I could really obtain a D-sword with zero effort, then there was no time to waste here. The desire to do so bubbled up within me. Don't! With a gulp, I ever so timidly, reached out for the sword. I grasped the hilt. Or rather, I tried to grasp it. But my hand had gone right through it, leaving me grasping only thin air. I tried once more, but the result was no different, because it's not your sword. I couldn't grab it. I couldn't even touch it. Did that mean that the sword wasn't real booted? As mutual recognition hadn't been achieved, it was no more than Ayase's delusion. An illusion. A dream. An afterimage.
何やってんだお前。
Misumi-kun looked at me in confusion. Dude, you're being weird, man. Stop being weird. We then waited for around 10 minutes, but Ayase still showed no signs of coming back. Same thing with Rimi. She was still in the bathroom, apparently. Where could she have actually gone?
リミってこの病室の場所知ってたか？
あ、
Didn't even think about that, did you? We'd asked for the location of the nurse's station after Rimi had left. She could very well be wandering all throughout the hospitals as we spoke, not having any idea where we were or where this place was.
あいつバカだからな。俺たちみたいに誰かに聞こうって発想がないのかもしんねえぞ。
探しに。
I felt uneasy not being with Rimi. I couldn't say for sure that this hospital was safe. If Shogun were reading my mind right now, he would have known that I was here.
そうだな。待つのも飽きたし、タクもあいつがいないと寂しいだろうからな。なあ、ぶっちゃけリミとはどうなんだ？
え？
The deal with us? He views her as his tether. I think that's probably the only thing, or a sense of normalcy that kind of keeps him from completely losing it.
付き合ってんのかって聞いてんだよ。お前ら、最近結構いい感じじゃね？
付き合ってないよ。
At least he's not lying, that's good. Despite what I'd said, my face was still flushed. Me and Rimi dating? It was true that I'd had delusions of that many times. I hadn't been interested in 3D in the past, but nowadays Rimi was becoming more and more important to me with every passing day. But back when Rimi had said she'd stay by my side, she also said the following.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ
Friends. In other words, she only saw me as a friend. There was no way in hell she'd want to start a romantic relationship with an otaku freak like me. Besides, Rimi would probably be a bit slow on the uptake with that kind of thing. I split ways with Masumi-kun and went to look for Rimi and Ayase. Masumi-kun had gone downstairs, so I decided to take my search above. The fuck? I passed by an older patient in the corridor, probably around his 50s. He was staggering down the hall while calling out to someone named Ami-chan over and over. I ignored him and headed farther into the corridor. Nobody seemed to mind me wandering around the hospital, maybe since I'd used to come here pretty often. But for every corner I turned and for every door I saw open, I felt my heart rate increase at the thought of Shogun appearing from them. And not only that, but the occasional crazed screams and cries coming from any number of directions wasn't exactly good for my mental state. The corridor was uniformly dyed a cream color. Some of the rooms were open, some were closed, and to make sure that there were no signs of Shogun being around, I peeked into a whole bunch of them. Each room had 2 beds lined up next to each other, with person-shaped bulges lying underneath the sheets, likely sleeping patients, but their faces were always in a blind spot, so I couldn't see them. There weren't many people walking through the corridors. Just the man calling for Ami-chan and a single nurse. Those are the only 2 I'd passed by. I didn't really want to be here. I didn't know why, but that feeling refused to leave me. The atmosphere was heavy. It wasn't oppressive per se, but I had the nagging feeling that I shouldn't have been there. A little farther in front of me, the corridor made a 90-degree turn to the right. Did the hospital rooms continue through here, I wondered? As I pondered that, I cautiously turned the corner. What the fuck? And I was immediately met with a wall. It sat in the middle of my path, and in vast contrast to the entirely cream-colored hospital, it was covered in black paint from top to bottom. A complete dead end. For some reason I didn't know, my pulse quickened. I couldn't move even a single step from where I stood. My vision wobbled and shook. Thinking it was vertigo, I tried to close my eyes and massage my eyelids with my fingertips, only to feel my eyeballs twitching beneath them. A chill as cold as ice crawled up over my feet. I stood dead in my tracks, forgetting how to even breathe, staring at the black in front of me. It felt as if it would suck me in, as if it would swallow me whole. A deep, never-ending darkness. Even though there shouldn't have been anyone there, it felt like somewhere, someone was watching me. God's gaze pierced into the nape of my neck. Its presence was on a completely different level compared to how it would be at my base. Don't look. Mustering all my mental strength, I managed to close my eyes. I finally was able to breathe again, and I stepped back while gasping for breath. With my head facing down toward the ground, I fled through the corridor. I sped back to the floor with Ayase's room, gasping and wheezing all the way. I touched the nape of my neck and felt sticky sweat oozing from it, but the sweat wasn't just coming from there. My entire body was drenched in it. This motherfucker is just he's just fucking... It's like every time he freaks out, his whole body is drenched with sweat. My dude! Hydrate! the hell's going on? Was Shogun reading my mind? The presence of God's gaze wouldn't go away. My wheezing and shivering refused to calm down. Exhaustion had devoured my motivation in an instant. I wanted to go home. I wanted to have Rimi take care of me as we locked ourselves in my base. It wasn't like me revisiting Ayase would make her happy. If anything, it would probably do the complete opposite. I was an idiot for coming along with Masumi-kun. The guy clearly had an agenda, and it was at complete odds with me. I had no reason to be here. Nurse! I should just go home. Before either Shogun or Yua appeared. They always appear whenever I least expected it. I bet they pinned down where I was these. No matter where I was, I needed to prepare. Tracing the wall with my hand, I staggered my way to Ayase's hospital room. Had Masumi-kun gone back yet? Hoping he'd found Rimi, I dragged my legs forward.
山井さんがまたアミーちゃんっていう名前を呼んでたんですよ。
Yamai? I heard the voice of a nurse coming from ahead. Looking up, I saw that two of them were walking in my direction. One was young and the other was a well-built middle-aged lady.
一体誰のことを探してるのか。
それこの病院に伝わる怪談よ。誰も知らない幻の病室があって、そこにアミーちゃんが入院してるらしいわ。
A phantom hospital room?
もう何年も前からある噂。
I looked back down and waited for the two to pass by. I held my breath to hide my ragged breathing. I could easily tell they were giving me suspicious looks, but they still ignored me all the same. After the two nurses passed me, I continued my endeavor and arrived at the nurses' station. I must have missed Ayase's room, as it should have been a bit before. Clicking my tongue, I wiped the sweat off my forehead. It still felt like I was being watched. The depths of my chest throbbed with pain. My ears were ringing too. I felt absolutely terrible. My body was a total wreck. I hadn't felt anything like this at all when I first got here. What the hell had happened to me in my body? With the pain overwhelming me, it was becoming too much to bear. I went to ask for help from the nurses at the nurses' station. Hey! But there was only one nurse there. And we got a better look at Takumi again. She didn't seem to have noticed me. Her back was turned to me, and she was mumbling something while deeply absorbed in whatever she was working on. In her hand was a clipboard. She was writing something on the form stuck to it.
信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ。
Takumi? Run. I'd seen this person many times before. She was that one nurse, Hazuki-san. Oh, this is the AH Tokyo General Hospital's psychiatry ward. Of course she'd be here. She'd already attended to me twice in the past month alone. Ah, man, this is perfect. If I called out to her, she'd surely help me with whatever I... An urgent-sounding ringing noise suddenly rang throughout the room. Hazuki-san put down her clipboard in surprise and operated to switch their hand. The ringing sound was cut off. She'd probably been paid to do some nursing thing as she rushed out of the nurse's station in a flurry. You didn't hear her doing that weird chanting? Why hadn't she noticed me? Even though I was suffering from so much pain right now behind her. I could barely stay standing. The vertigo was awful. With no other choice, I decided to go into the nurse's station to wait for someone to get back. I found a stool around where Hazuki-san had been standing, and then sat down. My head ached. It felt like it had back when the earthquake hit a week ago. But this pain had a different nature to it. Or so it felt, anyway. I needed something to drink. Just trying to breathe hurt my throat. Likely because of all the gasping and wheezing I'd been doing. I casually looked around the area. My eyes then landed upon the clipboard Hazuki-san had been holding. And the very next moment, what was scrawled on it entered my field of vision. Oh my God. Oh no. Is it her? Is she responsible for the crucifixion case? Why else would she draw somebody being crucified that way? And the weird thing that she was mumbling, may the divine light save us all? Or may the divine light save us. I don't know. Fuck! Whenever I'd gone in for a checkup, Hazuki-san had always been writing something on that clipboard of hers, all while having the same gentle smile on her face. I thought that she'd been writing down the prescriptions she planned on giving me. My temperature. Things like that. That was why what was drawn there was beyond my comprehension.
これって
I had seen it before. I had already seen this shittily drawn sketch somewhere before. But where? Where had I seen it? My head ached. A stabbing pain pierced through it. The hairs on the nape of my neck stood on end. Don't look at me. I picked up the clipboard. Countless medical forms are clipped onto it. I went to flip the page. The second piece of paper had the same shitty drawing. I flipped to the next page. The third was also the same. And the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. Each and every one of them had the same drawing scribbled on it, again and again and again! This drawing was the crucifixion. Evening fell on the roof of an old building in Shinsen, the building atop which Nishijo Takami's container house stood, still as death. It was Aoi Sena's second time visiting it. The first time had been a few days prior, following her encounter with Kozue and Takami and Sek-ai. She had gone on to tail the boy in secret. Through this, the location was set in stone in her mind. Oh, they're going to be finding all his dirty little secrets. They're going to find out he's a dirty little pervert. Fifi stuff is bad, but killing people fun. I'm broken. I'm fully aware that you're broken. So am I. Senna regarded Kozue in a cold manner, refusing to even turn around to view her sagging shoulders, nor her long face. Senna had come here to infiltrate Takami's room. Nishijo Takami is not normal. That was the conclusion she had come to after speaking to him many times. Got that fucking right. There was no doubt in her mind that he was distinctly different to normal, gigalomaniacs like Kozue and herself. Did he possess delusional abilities so abnormal it proved terrifying? Or could he perhaps be receiving some form of artificial support? Regardless of which it might be, the uncertain nature of Takami greatly bothered Senna. As of the current moment, she was searching for a man known as Hatano. Hatano? There was a very real possibility that Nishijo Takami had some kind of connection to him. She had no conclusive evidence to this. But through investigating even the most slightly suspicious things with her own eyes, the possibilities would be torn down one by one. And with such methodology, she would find her target with absolute certainty. That was Senna's creed. The door had a padlock attached to it. With a slight scoff, she swung down her D-sword that she had preemptively re-eluded. The padlock was effortlessly smashed to pieces.
匠さんが帰ってきたら怒られちゃうよ。
Sen had already confirmed that Takumi had been heading from school toward the station with 2 of his friends. However, even if he were to find out, it would make no difference to her. When it came to attaining her goal, Sen had no qualms with others coming to detest her, or even being reported to the police. She opened the door and stepped into the room. Well, this is just disgusting. Is that porn? I'm pretty sure Takumi would die of embarrassment if he found this out. Senna could only grimace at the disastrous cesspool of a room. The endless piles of trash forced a groan from her mouth.
汚いね。
なんで楽しそうなんだ小杖。
Because the girl's broken.
靴は脱いだ方がいいのかな。
Really? Did you really have to do that shoe pun? With a sigh, Senna ventured deeper into the room, shoes still adorning her feet.
お人形さんいっぱいなのら。匠さんって変態さんだったんだ。すごいな。
Paying no heed to Kozue, who seemed oddly impressed, Senna stood before the PC. She turned the power on without hesitation and scoured the desk with her eyes as she waited. We're going to find something that Takumi doesn't know about, that he doesn't realize, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Furrowing her brow, she picked up a sheet of paper that had been left on the desk, an essay. Oh, the whose eyes are those eyes thing. Kozue had peeked at the essay from behind Senna's back, and she was now jumping up and down in excitement.
やっぱり匠さんがその目誰の目の人だったのら。コズピーはパンパカパンタタポーン。
I can feel like it feels like Kozue. God damn it! I'm starting to. Ugh. Kozue's voice actress seems like she's either having a good time or she's like, okay, what is the most sickeningly sweet voice you can do? Oh, don't worry, I got this. In vast contrast to Kozue, Senna skimmed the essay with disinterest, then casually flipped it over. The very next instant, her eyes widened in shock.
これ。
Something was drawn there. It was...
うんぴー、人がいっぱいだね。これロボットさん？
She might notice something about this that we didn't.
IR2 だって。
Oh, IR2. I see. Oh, that didn't occur to me.
セナさん？
The sound of gritting teeth escaped from Senna's lips. Her expression was far more grim than usual, and the hand holding the essay trembled with anger.
そうか。
What?
西条が IR2 を生み出した張本人か。
Pardon? Her voice forcefully stifled. She crushed the sheet of paper in her fist. Responsible for IR2. What? Responsible for IR2. IR2 being the name potentially of an incident or something. And Senna is pissed off by this knowledge. What's the deal? Why? Guess we'll find out potentially next time. Okay. One by one, I'm starting to think that more of Takumi's supposed allies are turning against him now. And I feel like this is going to cause him to break even more. And I'm afraid of what's going to happen whenever that occurs. But for now, we'll end it there. If you all like this, be sure to let me know. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see all of you next time.